Welcome, friends. Welcome to today's Reconsider It live stream. Best live stream you're going to see all day. And here on this live stream, you are going to get a very exciting discussion stream, very exciting discussion tonight around the topic of engaging an audience, engaging people you're speaking with. My regulars know this is a running theme on these discussion streams. We're talking about communication, specifically communication in a setting where you are leading a discussion somewhat formally recognized. That could be something like in a professional setting, you need to lead a meeting or give a presentation, or maybe you're leading a live stream, or maybe you are leading a performance of some kind, you're a musician playing at a venue and you're leading whatever. It could work like that too. Anytime that you are leading a discussion. So that's what these discussion streams have been about for the past however many streams it's been. This is number 8, I believe. This is number 8 today, yeah. So we're continuing that theme today, the theme of discussion. And we're going to go specifically on to how do you move past just getting your audience to listen to you, and how do you move on to engaging them. It's going to be really good. You're going to get there's a lot of practical tips you could use in whatever area of your life that this applies to. As we are getting ourselves situated here, you hear some music playing in the background. Hopefully it's audible but not overpowering. I encourage you to give me feedback on that, on the levels of the volume of the music, the background music, versus how do you hear my voice coming in. That music that's playing in the background is one of my instrumental streams, Unspoken, episode 9 from October 17th, 2025. So that's going on in the background. You can hear that clearly if you want to go check out the whole stream. As we are getting ourselves situated, I'm checking out the chat. Yeah, we got Crazy Wabbit. Woo! Crazy Wabbit in place. I like it. Also with us, we got This World Needs a Hero. Also very good. I like how Wabbit has the 2 fingers like Wabbit ears, and This World Needs a Hero has a planet like a world. That's really nice. I see Plant a Seed Every Day is with us as well. Dude. Also, Trader of the Living. Trader of the Living is just ready to go. He's with it. He's got the what is this, a cup of coffee? Would you call that a mug? That's not quite a mug. As we get ourselves situated, my friends, getting ourselves ready, I do need to celebrate, and I got to grab my drink. I'm going to follow Trader to the Living's lead. Also with us, I see we have Shadow. Yeah, that's good. That's good. Friends, we're doing it. I'm going to celebrate you at this time. I'm going to count to 3 and make a nice clink. You are invited to join the rest of us as we cheers along and celebrate our togetherfulness. And it comes really fast. It goes like this: 1, 2, oh my goodness, 3, oh my goodness, clink. Cheers, my friends. What a nice drink we have here. Oh, that's good. That's very good and very togetherful. I feel very refreshed. Please like this video. Please subscribe. We're getting close to 600 subscribers. I'm wondering if we can get it up to 600 by the end of this calendar year. That's 2 months and another, let's say 25. That'll put me just over 600. Is that doable? I wonder. Also with us in the chat, I see C Boaster. Boaster? Should I just say Boaster? Or should I pronounce the OE like Booster? Should I do that kind of, is it that kind of pronunciation? In any case, welcome. Friends, we're continuing this very exciting discussion stream. As I mentioned during the warm-up there a couple moments ago, as I mentioned, this stream will be continuing the theme of these discussion streams where I'm leading according to my professional expertise. I'm leading some discussions around the topic of how can you be very effective when you're leading a discussion, when you are formally recognized as leading a discussion. Some common examples include in a professional setting, you need to lead a meeting, or you need to give a presentation, or you need to teach a class, or you're leading a live stream, or you are a performer and you're leading your performance. Any of these settings where you are clearly the one who is leading the conversation. This is not just like a back and forth between two people, although these principles do apply there too. In any case, that's my professional expertise, and so I'm sharing with you some foundation, some actionable tips you can use in any of these settings to help you be more effective in getting your audience's attention, communicating with them, and now today we're expanding further into engaging them. So you're going to get a lot of cool stuff. And as I say, this is a professional expertise of mine. I've been an educator for 25 years, just shy of 25 years. It's like 25 years and what, a week or two? I'm not sure exactly what the specific start date was when I was formally an educator that I began in exchange for a paycheck, that is. But it's just on the border of 25 years ago. So I've had 25 years as an educator, but more importantly for you, these topics of like how to be an effective speaker, how to be an effective educator. I am an educator of educators. So I also have in my skill set the topic of how to be an educator. It's not just that I am an educator and I've been an educator, I've been a speaker. I've taught thousands of people. A couple of years ago, it came out to like 6,000 and change that have come through classes of mine. And by the way, that's just in one specific formal professional setting. There's also things that weren't captured. There are things that were professional setting but not captured in those reports. There are things outside of this specific professional setting, but in a different professional setting. But in my current setting, it was something 6,000 and change. A couple of years ago was the count. So that was pretty nice. I've coached people one-on-one. All these topics I'm going to be talking about today, I coach. Not only do I teach people, I teach classes on this. I write books on it, private books. They're not available on Amazon or anything like that. Private to my organization. But also I coach people one-on-one. That's the kind of stuff I'm giving you today. Just effective how to be a speaker type of things. I see there's a little bit coming through the chat. I'm going to get caught up here. Plant a Seed is given a nice community-oriented cheers type of chat, which is very nice. You guys are seeing each other in other chats all through the day, other streams. That's nice. I'm happy to be a location for you to congregate with the people you like to congregate with. That's a good common use of this community as a resource, as like a place to hang out. That's good. This World Needs a Hero says, I want to engage my audience with the voice of someone from Slipknot. Okay, good. Yeah, that's good. This World Needs a Hero says he refrains. Okay, probably a good move. Unless they're there for that kind of music and you're that kind of singer with that kind of performance. Also with us, we got Viral. Woo! Friends, as I say, I've taught this stuff for many, many years. I've coached hundreds of people. I'm an educator of educators. I'm like at the top of the pyramid of all that. So you're getting the real deal today, which is nice. And all that is to say, here's what I've been building up to. that I do have a bit of a loose agenda here of some topics to cover for this topic of engagement. But this is not meant to be strictly a lecture. This is meant to be, as I talk about these things, you will have ideas about various stuff. You will have thoughts about how you feel you do some of this already, and you'll have your own insights to share. You'll also feel like you do something similar to what I'm saying, and you want to ask whether that thing's similar to confirm whether you got that. You'll have just like straight up clarifications, like, what did you mean by that? You'll have straight up questions. You'll say, you know what do you think about this other thing? All of those things, I encourage you to let me know what those are. If you're here with us live in the chat, let me know in the chat. If you're here with us after the stream and you're watching on replay, let me know in the comments. This is the kind of stuff that, you know, as I say, I've taught many people this stuff. I've coached hundreds of people individually on this stuff. I am the trainer of trainers of trainers. So I will help you with whatever your follow-ups are. Let me know what they are. Or, you also, many people do like to just listen and they don't have any kind of follow-ups. That's also good. Just let me know if you do. You shouldn't feel like you have to not say your thing. I see with us, we've got Abdel. Woo! That's nice. Welcome. So friends, we're getting into the topic of engaging your audience. This is good. Engaging your audience. Once again, we're talking about a setting where you are leading a conversation of some sort. If you are following along with all of these discussion streams and you are caught up with everything previously, then you know all the foundation you need in order to follow this stream. If you did not catch the prior streams, or if you would like a refresher, which would be very reasonable, I'm going to do that briefly. I'm going to give you a summary of the parts that matter for today. What are the which parts of the table do you need to know? Which legs do you need in order to stand this up? So here's the parts that matter. If you're talking about engaging your audience, you are in the professional setting, leading a meeting or giving a presentation or teaching a class, or you are leading a live stream, or you're a performer leading your performance. Whatever it is, whatever your setting is, it might be something different. You might be leading a Zoom. Whatever it is that you are leading, you're in that position and you want to engage your audience. That's good. You are thinking on the right track. However, from the previous streams, the content you need first is you have to have their attention. And you need to have their attention not in just a way that is sort of like, metaphorically, you take a flare gun and it's like, I got their attention for a second. What I mean is more like, the structure of attention, and this, maybe not the system, but let's say the system that I'm offering you, that this is like a structure by which to manage more or less every sentence you say. And so how do you get their attention? That you have to have their attention in a sustained, controlled manner before you can try to engage them in any way. And by the way, when I say engage them, what I mean is have them take an action of some sort. And that includes just thinking about something. But have your audience take an action of some kind. That's what I mean by engagement. And that's what we're building up to today. In any case, so you need the foundation of getting their attention first before we can get into engagement. What is it that you need from the prior streams? Let's review. Again, let me know whatever follow-ups you have. The the prior streams were all built on this concept of communication being subjective, with each person having their own interpretive framework by which things take on meaning. They, say something, you say something to them, and what do they hear? What they hear is dependent upon their personal, life history and education and spiritual experience and knowledge, all of this, social media, programming, all of this kind of stuff. Everybody has their own interpretive framework, and the insight of all of that is you are you are setting yourself up for success best when you use the other person's interpretive framework in order to communicate with them. That's the core insight of most of these streams. Okay, cool. In order to do that, you have to either formally know something about your audience, like they're all there to learn about that, exercise or stretch technique that you promised them in order to fix that pain. Like you know something about your audience. You have an audience for a reason. What is it that your audience is there for? And the more that you know about your audience, the more that you can communicate in terms that are meaningful for them. This is the core insight of all of it. We talk about it with the computer engineering concept of drivers, and everybody has different drivers. Pretty nice. Beyond this idea of doing the best that you can to avoid expressing yourself, that's not a good communication principle. You shouldn't try to express yourself fully. Here's me doing every little nuance and cranny of expressing myself. That should not be your priority in communication. You express what you need to, yes, but it shouldn't be you personally investing everything in what you say and do and expressing. No. You're using their terminology, their preferred expressions of whatever sort, their comfort level with whatever feeling has to occur, like anything along these lines. You're using the other person's interpretive framework, fitting within what they expect. This is what maximizes your probability from the beginning. Good, we're good. But now we have the next concern. You have your audience, they're there for whatever reason, and you know whatever you know about them. That's good. If this is in as I say, a professional setting, this is usually pretty well defined. This is usually, you know very clearly, you're leading a meeting about this specific topic, and they need to know it for these reasons. That's pretty well defined in a professional setting. If you are leading a live stream in a public platform like YouTube, let's say, you're leading a live stream, you don't necessarily know a lot of details about every individual in your audience. For the ones that are regulars, you do know some things. They always talk about this. When they're hanging out, you know that they tend to make these kinds of comments. They tend to, whatever the tendencies are, you pick up on some of that, and you can start playing into that as you frame the way that you say things in language that you know is going to be meaningful for your audience. In a performer, as I was saying earlier, you're a performer leading your performance at some venue. Again, you may or may not know much about your audience. I'm at this, art gallery doing this performance for this specific. Okay, maybe then you might know something about your audience. You can say, hey, who's into the thing that we're all here for? And people will be like, woo! You feed into what they are likely to respond to. Basic principle. But now you have the core problem of sneezing. How do you manage your sneezing? One method is to turn your head away to the best of your ability. So you know something about your audience and you're getting ready to speak in a way that you hope that they'll respond to. Using some kind of terminology they might respond to, using some kind of like mood that they're likely to respond to, whatever it is. A catchphrase, maybe this is a repeat audience and there's a catchphrase on your streams, you do some kind of thing that they respond to, whatever it might be. You're ready to begin in that. But you have to get their attention. So this is one of the things also from a review. You have to get their attention. How do you get their attention? Well, you get their attention by just speaking on some grayscale of being direct. You speak to the thing that you know about them. Whatever it is that you know about your audience, you start promising them something that they're going to like. You promise them something that's going to benefit them in some way. I gave you 3 principles for this, and that was to promise them something that empowers them in some way. You're going to be able to, this is going to be so much easier for you. This is going to be something that you can use to your advantage. You empower them in some way. So that's one thing, empower them. Another, there's 3 principles. Empower them was one. Another one is promise them that this is going to be pleasurable, or they'll like it. This is going to be so good. You're going to be so satisfied. You're going to feel proud of yourself. Anything along these lines. This is just going to feel good. That's it. This is just going to feel, you're going to like it. Anything along those lines. Pleasure. That's the second thing. You empower them. You say this is going to be pleasurable. Or the third thing is it's a strategy they can use. A strategy to avoid something that's difficult or painful or arduous or time consuming, whatever it is. You have a strategy for avoiding that painful thing, or if not painful, something they're afraid of. If you know something your audience is afraid of, fear is like probably the biggest motivator, period. So you could use that. That's a little bit of black magic, though. That's please don't abuse that one. Ideally, you're speaking to something that helps your audience. That's a more positive one. But in any case, you're speaking to something that's going to motivate them to perk up. That's good. That's the core way to get their attention, like in a burst. And part of your goal in whatever it is you're doing, presentation, live stream, etc., that whole list from earlier, whatever it is that you're doing, your goal is to do that, that is to say, to speak directly and openly to how they're going to get something that's empowering, pleasurable, or strategic. You just say like, oh, and by the way, remember this is going to help you to da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever you're telling them. Or you're really going to love how this blah, 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 blah. Anything along those lines. Your task is to do that in two, let's say, 2 approaches in order to maximize your effectiveness. One is to do it at certain specific key moments, such as at some point near the beginning of your thing. This will vary a little bit depending upon your venue. If you are, let's say, again, presentation or meeting at work or something, you should say it literally the first words out of your mouth. All right, it's like, all right, welcome to this presentation where you're going to get blah, 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 blah. It should be literally the first words you say. If you're a live streamer, you might say it kind of near the beginning, within the first minute or 2, that like this stream is going to be so good for you for these reasons. It's empowering, it's pleasurable, it's strategic, whatever it is. This helps you in this way. Say it near the beginning, within the first minute or 2, and then probably repeat it again by like 10 minutes in for people who missed the first 10 minutes. If you're a performer, you might like do a song first, so maybe 2 songs first before you even say anything. But when you do, that's when you come on and say like, oh, this is such a cool event we're sharing. Oh, I'm having such a good time. Thanks for being here. You're the coolest. That's the kind of thing you say at I don't know, like a dive bar if you're playing a show. Whatever it is, though. So you say these promises that this is going to benefit you. You say these promises at certain specific moments at the very beginning. Also, I would say like if your content has any shifts of content in it, you talk about something for a little bit, but then you move on to something else. Okay, when you move on to the other thing, that's when you should have some bookends. You should be like, all right, well, it was really great talking about, this topic so that now you have all of this understanding about blah, 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 blah. Now we're going to go into this new topic, and here you're going to get blah, 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 blah. So you just kind of bookend it like that as you transition. So at the beginning of anything, it's sort of what I'm saying. At the beginning of your content altogether, and then at any subject matter transitions, those are musts. Those are like absolute must. Put bookends on that. Aside from those 100% required thing, so that your audience continues to know that this is meaningful for them, it gives them a reason to like maybe want to continue listening to you. That's why this is strategic, by the way. It's not just how do you like shoot off a flare gun to get their attention quickly. This is how do you like really get sustained attention in a manner that is real. Like it's not like, I mean, this technically is almost like a hypnosis technique. This isn't exactly hypnosis, but this is you like controlling the frame through which your audience views your content. It's controlling the frame through which your audience receives what you're saying. You're controlling how they perceive it when you use this technique that I'm talking to you about. It's empowering, it's pleasurable, it's strategic, whatever it is. You just have to say it. Don't let it be unsaid. Tell your audience. So you be very like overt and explicit like this at these critical moments. You bookend it anytime you switch topics. Cool, that's obvious. Also, within the topic, you should at some point be restating how this empowers your audience, or it is pleasurable for them, or it is strategic for them. Should be restating that once every 5 to 10 minutes. More often is better. These these you can start getting more subtle, and you can like require your audience to maybe connect the dots a little, but you're still pretty directly telling them, but you're not necessarily making it like, and so let me summarize for you, like very overtly with your words. But nonetheless, you can still be like, and remember, this is really cool because blah 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 blah. You can still sort of tell them, but more under the radar kind of way. So that's still every 5 to 10 minutes. Beyond that, you should still be talking about the content from the perspective not only of your audience's driver, so you're using words that they understand and all that. Yes, keep doing that. But also, you should still be just talking about it as empowering or pleasurable or strategic. Talk about it as though that's just an obvious fact. It's very clear that if you do this kind of technique, you're going to get the audience's attention because that's what people pay attention to. And so I'm just sort of casually talking about it. Yeah, of course, that's what people pay attention to. And so you're going to be really effective when you get there. Da, 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 da. I can sort of slide it in, and you would accept it without questioning it. That's the sort of technique I'm talking about, where you say things very under the radar that your audience would not even think to question because that's what you're talking about. Of course. Well, yes, of course that's going to benefit me in whatever way. Yeah, I'm sold. It's blah, blah, blah. Tell me the thing. So this is how you attract their attention, and you reinforce that they made the right decision to give you their attention. This is the core framework of it, is that you simply talk about those three things: empowering, pleasurable, strategic. And you make sure you do it at the critical moments when you start and end any topic of any sort. Bookend it then. And you'd be very obvious at that point. And you like get on the megaphone and you're like, this is good for you because you get very overt in those moments, the start and the end of a topic. In between, at least once every 5 to 10 minutes or so, you start getting a little more subtle. Start requiring your audience to connect the dots a little. And then further between that, you're just talking about your content in a way that assumes it's benefiting them. Okay, good. So you've got enough repetition to really know what I'm talking about there, and you have a very strong grasp of all of this sense of grabbing their attention. Warhart says this could be useful for a business pitch. Yes. Yes. This is the foundation of a sale. Like this is the core backbone of a sale. And so you have to be speaking your audience's language, and you have to tell them that this is benefiting them, not just let them figure out that it's benefiting them. And by the way, the only thing that I'm talking about are like legitimate, you really do have something for them, not like lying to them. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, no, like, as Warhart says, I'm doing like legitimate business here. I'm going to do a pitch. Yeah, exactly. You legitimately have something to offer. That's where I come in and help you. That's where I help you be more effective, when you really have something. So yeah, your task is just to speak your client's language, and also remind them along the way, this is so good, isn't it? Isn't this going to make it so much easier? Just think of how much easier this is going to be. That kind of thing. And by the way, that's what we're getting into today. I still have a little bit of review. I'm going to do one more brief. I'm thinking, actually, do I need to review these for this topic today? The first one we talked about, yes. I guess the first two. We talked about you speak your audience's language. Do not try to express yourself. That's not the task in communication. It's you have to speak their language. What is your audience ready to hear or want to hear? You speak their language. That was the first review we did today. We also did the review of how to get their attention, both in the get it right now, and also sustain it in a way that your audience feels like this is worth continuing to dedicate their attention to. And those two alone, they will make you, of course, more effective at getting attention and such. But I believe those are enough of a foundation. I'm thinking for a minute here. Less than a minute, technically. Yeah, I think this is it. Okay, that's all we need for a review here. Just those two topics. Speak your audience's language as a core principle of all these live streams, and then get their attention by promising empowerment, pleasure, or strategy. Okay. So now we have to get into the topic of engaging your audience. Hooray! That's good. And as I mentioned a couple minutes ago, when I say engaging here in this context, engaging your audience, what I mean is get them to do something. Get your audience to take an action of some sort. That is what we're talking about right now. That action could just be thinking about something. That's enough. That's still getting them to do something. The key is just you're getting them to do what you told them to do. That's the topic for today. So on that topic of getting them to do what you told them to do, it is good if the following applies. This may not always apply. It depends on your specific setting. But this first thing I'm going to share with you, this is called setting expectations. Setting expectations is where you simply tell them directly how your interaction is going to unfold. For example, if you're leading a meeting or you're giving a presentation in a professional setting, let's say, you might say something like, all right, as we go through this presentation here, I'm going to give you the summary of our progress on my team for the past 6 months. I'm going to show you a summary of our product changes, our improvements. I'm going to show you the way that you get to have input on where we go next. I'm going to tell you all of the new things that are coming out related to us, but we didn't directly do. And then we're going to have a time at the end where I'm formally setting aside time for us to talk about whatever your input is right now. And you'll be able to tell me everything at that time. We also, right now, we have, I don't know, Mark. Here's Mark. And Mark is our stenographer. He's, of course, going to be taking all of your follow-ups that you might give us. And that's how we're going to do it today. So that's setting expectations. That's just laying it out flat. That's sort of determining who is doing which role. I said, I'll be giving you a summary of this. I'll be giving you this. And when we get to the end, I'm setting aside time for this. I'm talking about how I'm the ringleader here and I am running the show. And here's what's going to happen. We're going to do it like this. And then you're going to tell me this and all of this. So this idea of setting expectations, if that is applicable in your case, that's a good thing to do early. When we started this stream here, I set expectations by talking about things like I have an agenda of a couple of bullet points we're going to talk about, and it's going to be about these topics. You're going to get this out of it. It's going to be about engaging your audience, which means getting them to take an action. And then we're going to start by doing a review, and then we're going to get into all of this. But also, by the way, even though this is a couple of talking points, I encourage you to let me know your thoughts as we go. Please let me know your follow-ups. Let me know your insights. I set expectations about how this whole thing is going to work. And so that is an example of what I'm talking about. If it's applicable for what you're doing, set expectations to the best you can. You're a performer who is performing at a venue. You're a rapper doing a dive bar show, and there's 15 people in the bar. You can say things like, I'm going to do a few songs. This is going to be really dope. You might ask people things like, if you've already finished your drink or you're close to finishing your drink, you're going to want to get another one soon. You kind of walk people through what the experience is going to be like. You're informing them of what the future will be, but most importantly, beyond just informing your audience of what's going to happen and how, you're positioning yourself as the ringleader. That's the most essential aspect of what I'm sharing with you now. This idea of setting expectations, because you're the one who's saying how things are going to go. So this is like a, you could say like a subconscious influence move. You're positioning yourself as the one who knows what's happening, and they are following you. You could get away with something like this if somebody were extraordinarily ignorant about how the world works. And you could say something like, listen, let me just tell you what's going to happen here. We're going to walk out of this door, and we're going to be outside for some time. You are going to see that it's light, but then there's going to be this really bright light. If you look up, there's going to be this really bright, shining thing. You shouldn't look right at it because you hurt yourself. But you're going to see that it's going to sort of drop, and then it's just going to fall away on the horizon over there. And it's going to be dark. It's going to be dark for a while. And you see this other light. You can look at this other one when it's dark. That one looks a little bigger to our eyes. You're going to see that also kind of moves and then falls over there. And then it's going to be light again. It's going to be that really bright one earlier. And you can just say, like, here's how it's going to go. Here's what you're going to see. And if it's true, again, what I coach you on, the secrets that I'm revealing to you, this is when you have a legitimate situation. You're legitimately leading a product meeting or product sales call, or you're legitimately leading a live stream where you're, leading your audience in whatever it is that you get together with your audience for. In those cases, that's where you can lay out what's going to happen and how it's going to happen, and it positions your audience as, in some way, um, what's the word I want to use? It positions your audience as following you. You're the one who knows how things are going to go. It's very subtle, but if you can do that, you know, right after you start getting their attention with these promises of how it's empowering or pleasurable or strategic, once you're doing that stuff and you got their attention, that's when you launch into like, all right, here's what's going to happen. You're going to get this here. For my regulars who join my music streams, you might notice that when I start those streams, I say things like, you're going to get a very nice hour of some improvised live looping, and we're going to bring in the synth, and they're going maybe we'll talk about. I tell you what's going to happen on the stream. That's an example of this. Just early on, you let this in. So that's the first technique. I see a little bit has come in the chat. I want to get caught up about what's going on here. Warheart is underscoring my point here very eloquently. Warheart says, if this initial rundown of how you're going to get something that benefits you, and look at how it's going to unfold like this, Warheart says it's easy for people to lose confidence in listening. That is true. I would also, instead of, I would say it causes people to lose confidence in paying attention. I'd be specific with paying attention, because that's what you're trying to manage here. Is you're trying to manage their focus, their attention, because people have so many things. You are just one signal in their very overwhelming life. You have to somehow be worth paying attention to, and you have to continuously renew that. And as Warhart says, you have to continuously renew their confidence in wanting to pay attention. That's what all this is about. Once every 5 or 10 minutes, you kind of subtly remind them. But then you also get into, here's what's going to happen in the next hour. Here's what's going to happen in the next whatever. Wabbit has a nice shout out to anyone who is hanging out with us, lurking, anyone who is with us but not in the chat, which is legit. That's why Wabbit is giving you a very nice shout out. So this is good. We got one engagement oriented enhancement for you. You get their attention, that's good. And then you move on to, here's what's going to happen. Just so you know what's going to happen. You position yourself as the one who knows what's going to happen. If there's anything in your here's what's going to happen setting of expectations, if there's anything in there that involves, I am going to do blah, you are going to do blah, say that. Say all of that too. So that's a good element of setting expectations. You get the most out of this if you do blah. That's very high level expectation setting. After that, I have two families of things that there's a lot of room for you to explore and play with. A lot of room for you to feel out what works well for you, and then you can perfect those, and then later come back to the other ones that maybe weren't your first choice. So there's a lot of options in here. I would say from everything else that we talk about here in these next two categories, which, by the way, the two categories are question types, you asking a question in order to engage your audience, and imperatives. Imperatives is the other one. Question types and imperatives. In these two categories, I'm going to give you a lot of stuff. Your goal should not necessarily try to do all of it at once. This is why I say pick things that kind of resonate naturally. Pick a couple things, 2 or 3 things that you're like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. I can see that resonate naturally. Or maybe you already do. And then maybe there's something I say that gives you a new insight, and you say, oh, it'd be more effective if I did blah, 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 blah. Because when it comes to question types specifically, let's just launch into them. Question types and imperatives. Those are the two ways I'm giving you to engage. When it comes to question types specifically, questions are, in my observation, as I say, hundreds of people who I've coached. In my observation, when a person is leading a class, leading a presentation, or any of the other situations I described, and the person thinks they want to engage the audience, almost always, the first thing the person does is they start asking questions. Questions are like just the most natural thing that almost all the time, almost all people, that's the first thing they try. They're like, oh, let me try the Socratic method. Let me ask questions. Almost always, that's what people do. And in these coaching situations where I'm observing people, oftentimes we have a conversation that, goes something like this. We have a lot of conversations about a lot of topics. But on the topic of questions, I'm going to ask the audience a question. Oftentimes the conversation goes sort of like this, where they're like, yeah, sometimes I really have them. And, that question really landed. Other times I asked a question and it didn't land. And I don't know what's going on. I don't know why. And it's usually, I'm not going to say always, because maybe there's some exceptions to this. I'm not aware of any exception off the top of my head. But let's say usually, almost always, if someone is having an inconsistent experience with engaging their audience with questions, generally it's because of one of two reasons. One, they didn't do all of the things that you already know that we reviewed earlier. The things like speak the person's language, the fundamentals of communication, speak their language, not your language. Get their attention by promising them empowerment, strategy, or pleasure. Get their attention. Those things. Usually, if a person is having an inconsistent experience with engaging the audience with questions, they might be lacking some of those principles of getting attention in the first place, like really having their attention. Just because someone is like sitting there not talking, you don't necessarily have their attention really. They might just be being polite, you know? So, how do you actually get their attention in a reproducible manner that you can do over and over and consistently be successful? That stuff. So sometimes the person is not doing those things, and we review those things, and the person gets stronger there, and then naturally everything else works out. Okay, good. That's nice. But there's the other category. The other category of why someone has a inconsistent experience with trying to engage their audience with questions. The other category is they are using the wrong question type at the wrong time. So there are different types of questions, techniques, different types of question techniques. And each of them has, let's say, like a, a intended use case. Maybe you could sometimes get away with them in other cases too, but they all have sort of like, yeah, you got a nail, you use a hammer for that. Oh, you got a screw, you use a screwdriver for that. They all have like an intended use, these different question types. So I'm going to run down some of these. I may or may not do all of these. Okay, I think we can actually do all of these. I have 7 techniques for you. These are some of the techniques that I write training materials on, and I educate people on. I lead classes on this stuff. This is what I coach people on. I'm giving away the magic secret sauce here. As I said, I have 7 question techniques, but 2 of them are really the same thing. So I'm just going to talk about I'm going to talk about them as the same thing. So here's the first one. This one is probably the one I most strongly recommend for like all settings. This one does not require your audience to say anything back to you. Sometimes questions are just about getting your audience to think about something, and this is one of those. So this technique, this question technique, first one here, as I say, highly recommend. Can you do this very often? You absolutely can. Do I recommend this in like almost every setting to basically everyone I work with? Uh-huh. Yeah, I do. That's what this one is. This one is a high recommend. This is called an active learning or an active thinking or an active listening. It's the active part that matters. The way you do this one is you simply ask a very straightforward question with a very obvious answer. Ideally, it's a yes no question or a true false question. But you just ask a question with a very, very straightforward, obvious answer. Pause briefly, maybe 1 second, pause for a small beat, and then you say the answer out loud. You answer it yourself. For example, if I use this technique right now and I phrase something as a question for you, do you think about this? Do you think about the answer to this? Yeah. Yeah, you do. And if I ask you another question right now, do you also think about an answer for this one? You do. You engage with this. And is this something that I can keep doing even though you know that I'm doing the technique? Even though you know I'm doing this technique, does it still work? Does it still kind of make you think about the answer a little? It does. Is this a little bit more engaging than stating something? It is. It is. It's a little bit more engaging. So this is a very, very easy technique that you can do very easily. You are going to be so empowered with your ability to do this technique. Man, it's going to be so effective. Is this going to be effective? Yeah, it is. It's going to be effective. The easiest way to use this technique, you can take any sentence, just write out what you're going to say, and you can turn that into a question. You can take any statement and turn it into a question. Watch. Can I take any statement and turn it into a question? Yeah. Yeah, I can. It's a very easy technique for you to implement right away. So use that. You can overdo it with that technique, but you don't have to worry about overdoing it. I don't know that I've ever seen someone overdo that. I mean, maybe. You're not gonna. You're gonna do it less than you think you're gonna. And it's still good that you're doing it at all. That's my attitude about it. Feel free to dial it up, do it more. But what's even better is if you have a plurality of techniques. If you have a plurality of techniques where you do a whole bunch of things and it's like at all times you're always doing something. One of these techniques. That's the ultimate goal of everything, is that you build up a very large vocabulary of all these things that I'm sharing with you on this stream today. And eventually you get good at all of them and you kind of do all of them all the time. That's a good presenter. That's a good speaker. That's a good educator. That's a good live stream artist. That's a good performer. Somebody who's always doing something engaging. So we got the first question technique. As I said, there's 6 of them. There's 6 techniques I'm giving you today. The next one I have is a fill in the blank. And a fill in the blank is kind of like an active learning. The technique for a fill in the blank, the most effective technique for a fill in the blank, because if you think about this, like what is a fill in the blank? What is a fill in the blank? What's the nature of it? The fill in the blank is you're expecting the audience to fill in the blank. You're expecting them to know what goes in the blank. So the most, let's say the simplest, most reliable technique that you could use for this, for fill in the blank, in order to set your audience up to know what you mean, in order to set your audience up to be thinking the thing that you want them to be thinking, the simplest, most reliable technique is to give them a strong dichotomy or strong polarity, a binary of some sort. Force their thinking into some kind of binary thinking. And you say, well, it's not this, it's that. It's not up, it's like you already have thought the word that I wanted you to think. And that's because I said it's not this extreme. And so your mind spontaneously goes to, okay, well, then it's blah other thing. That's a very reliable, simple technique you could use for a fill in the blank. And I would say that's the main thing I recommend for a fill in the blank, the extremes. That's a way of active learning. Is that sort of like setting your audience up with an easy yes or no? Yeah. Yeah, it's sort of like that. By the way, with that technique where I said you take anything and you take any statement and turn it into a question, you should be framing it in the positive. You should be setting your audience up to say in their head yes, or whatever the positive is. Whenever you're talking about true, they should be saying the good thing. That's what you should be setting your audience up for. Set them up to say yes in response to you. The more you get them saying yes, the better. We got active learning. That's good. We got that one. That was the straightforward yes or no that you set up, pause briefly, and then answer. Fill in the blank. That's the one that's like, it's a kind of the same type of question. You're setting your audience up to think something specific. But a fill in the blank, you can get outside of yes and no. A fill in the blank, you simply draw the extreme. Cool, we're good with it. That's 2 techniques, but they're still sort of just one technique. Let's move on to something that's fundamentally different. This one is very powerful, but has limitations. One of the limitations is you can only use this sparsely. What is the reason you can only use it sparsely? Here's the reason. The reason you can only use it sparsely is this one, in order to do it effectively, your audience has to say something in response to you. You can't overdo that because you're in the setting where you're leading the conversation. It's not a back and forth. So this is a use it occasionally. If you're leading a presentation in a professional setting, and let's say you're giving a 30-minute presentation, you could use this 1 or 2 times maybe. If you're leading a class, an 8-hour class, you could use this a few times. A few times per hour. It's pretty good. Same thing if you're doing a live stream or a performance. This one may or may not apply. It does apply if you have a very clear sense of why your audience is there. Like, this is a fundraiser for blah, 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 blah. Like, you know exactly why they're there. In that case, you might be able to do this one. If it's general public, though, this will be use your discretion. This one may or may not be applicable. But it's very powerful. It's very, very powerful if it does apply. Here is the technique. The technique is there is a question you're going to ask that has a specific, clear, correct answer. One correct answer. There's the right answer. That's one of the elements of this technique. It's called a leading technique. There has to be a specific answer you're going for. The next criteria is you didn't tell them this thing. So it's not like you're asking them to remember something. That would be something different. In this one, it's specifically something you have not talked to them about. They have to figure it out. And that's actually the final piece of it. They have to be able to figure it out kind of quickly. 2 seconds. They kind of think about it or they look at it, whatever it is you're doing, and they can pretty much see it within 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and they can respond pretty quickly. So those are the 3 criteria. I guess maybe there's the 3 criteria, but there's the prerequisite, which is that the setting you're in is such that you will expect your audience to communicate with you and tell you something in return, in response. And as I say, the 3 criteria of such an engagement, such a question, is that there's something with a correct answer and you didn't tell them. In other words, they have to figure it out. And it's straightforward and easy enough that they'll figure it out in just a couple seconds just by thinking about it briefly or looking at it. A leading question, a leading technique. Very powerful because it gets them to literally open up their face and say stuff at you or maybe chat something at you. Cool. But it's very limited in its scope. That's one of the ones that I often see people apply wrongly, that they'll ask their audience something that, let's say, does have a correct answer and they would have to figure out, but it's really, we talked about this 10 minutes ago, do you remember? And in those cases, sometimes the audience doesn't respond positively because it can feel patronizing. If you're asking them to figure something out that you yourself already talked to them about. Sometimes people do that. So that's let's say, a pitfall. That's a not uncommon pitfall. So that's another technique. Now you got 3 if you count fill in the blank as its own type of question. Fill in the blank, you could also argue, is a type of leading question because you're setting the audience up. But maybe I should just keep them separate. Active listening, fill in the blank, leading. You got 3 techniques. We're going to count them like that. The remaining ones are many of the remaining ones require the audience to do even less. So the next one is to have them remember something. Hey, remember a couple minutes ago when blah blah blah? Think back to a time when you blah 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 blah. Remember remember what it was like to be a teenager. Think about that for a second. I'm having you remember something. Who can tell me blah 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 if you're in a setting where you're having a lot of high engagement with your audience and they're actually going to talk with you? Who can tell me blah blah blah? Who remembers blah 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 blah? Something from, let's say, maybe at work, a previous meeting. Who remembers last week when we were talking about blah? Who remembers the thing when whatever? That's a way to get their engagement, to have them remember something. And again, not patronizing, like really something that they would have to think back for a second to remember. Oh yeah, it was da 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 da. Yes. Good. So that's it. That's called a recall technique. Have them recall something. Have them remember something. Think back to blah, 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 blah. That's it. They just did something. And you can have them tell you it back if you need that. But even just the act of telling them to remember, that's already that's in the second category. We talk about questions right now. The other category I'm giving you tonight is imperatives. This kind of straddles both of those. A recall, tell them to remember something. The next category of questions. This one is called a relevance, or you might think of it as an imagination question. That's where you have your audience think of a way that they can imagine themselves using this, or think of a way you can imagine yourself integrating this. And that's something that you might even do with this right now. Like you might already be thinking about how you might use these question techniques. You might already be getting some ideas of how you could use this specific technique of relevance question. Think about how you can get someone to be thinking about how it's relevant for them. You might be thinking about that already. Now, if I needed you to say it back to me, then this would be a question technique. But otherwise, this is more of a straddling again, imperative versus question technique. The next category, this one you do expect your audience to say things, and this is think of this one as being like a release valve for people who already want to say things. In every audience you have, there's always some portion of people who have expertise already in the thing you're talking about, legitimately. And it's not like they're um, have a big ego or something. No, they actually really are experienced, and they do already know what you're talking about. That is always going to happen in every audience. And your task is to manage that. Because when that happens, the people in your audience who feel that way, the people in the audience who have some expertise in the thing you're talking about, they feel like they want to participate. They feel like they want to say, "Oh yeah, you're not kidding. That's a real thing." And here's why. They want to like add to the conversation, which is a very natural response. If I'm, if I'm telling you something that you don't know yet, it makes a lot of sense that you would sit there and want to listen. But if I'm saying something that you do have some familiarity with, you are more inclined to want to participate in that conversation. And so this next question technique is to invite such individuals to share what they know. It's called an expert question. And you simply ask them, like, all right, let me know what you think about blah, 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 blah. I know some of you already know this thing. Who already knows this thing here? That's called an expert technique. I did this earlier in this stream. I said things like, "Yeah, as I'm saying things today, you're going to be thinking about how you want to apply some of this. You might already feel like you do some of this. I encourage you to let me know in the chat or let me know in the comments. How do you use these things?" That was me using that expert technique so that you would feel comfortable letting me know that you feel, any of these things is familiar to you. Like what Warhard says here in the chat. Warhard says, "Yeah, if you miss that initial rundown, people are going to lose confidence in listening." That's Warhart knowing what I'm talking about because he's done it too. And I'm simply encouraging you that I say you should consider this an appropriate platform to share your insights and put things in your words and stuff like that. That's a technique. I'm both legitimately, genuinely inviting you to do that, and it's also an engagement technique that allows me to manipulate your psychology. That's a technique you could use. The final one that I have, this one, if you're using it strategically, the best position for this is at the start of a conversation. When you want to like really set the stage and you want to make sure that they are totally bought into this conversation. That's when this next technique, this is the final questioning technique that I'm sharing with you. That's when this one is best utilized. This one is called a circle of knowledge. In a circle of knowledge, you invite your audience to tell you what their basically what they care about. You invite them to tell you why they came here. What's their pain point? What's the pleasure that they came here for? The empowerment, the strategy they need. You invite them to talk about it. Like, what brings you to a live stream that's about discussion? And you might say things like, "Oh, once in a while I need to lead a meeting on giving a sales pitch." Once in a while, I do need to, lead a class on something. I do lead my own live streams. I'm here for this, that, and the other thing. And as people tell you what their need is or what the vacancy is in their experience, that's when you get to come back and respond to that and be like, well, I'm happy to tell you you're going to get exactly what you need. Now you're going to be able to lead a live stream really effectively. Now you're going to be able to lead that sales pitch meeting very effectively. So you set your audience up by telling you what they need. You're setting them up to be receptive when you give them the solution, which is what your whole meeting or presentation or live stream is about. So those are the question techniques. I'm going to run through them one more time. The first three are the ones that are strictly questions. Let me rearrange these actually. This would be more effective. The first four are ones that are either questions or you expect your audience to say something to you. I see Jack is with us. Jack, woo! Jack actually requested this content about question types. Good timing. Jack, I'm about to do a summary of this whole thing we were just talking about. This is exactly what you were asking for. I see Marco is with us. Marco, woo! Also, Plant a Seed has some thoughts. Let me read these before I give the summary of the 7 types of questions we just talked about. Before I give that summary, Plant a Seed is adding some stuff here. Let's see. Plant a Seed says, when you give people shout outs to someone who's new or you noticed a few times but not spoke much and you bring them in too, oh, Plant a Seed is talking about my streams, I think. Am I reading this right, Plant a Seed? When I give, he's talking about me, reconsider it. I thought you were giving a general tip. When I give shout outs to people, it brings them in. Plant a Seed says, I'm usually happy lurking, but add a comment here and there. Yeah, that's good. So you're saying calling people out. Yeah, you know that a person's name is the thing they respond to most. A person's name. And that would include screen names. But their actual real name, that's the thing they respond to most. So if you put in the person's name here or there, even if it's their screen name, they'll respond to that. Plant a Seed says, that's generally for a podcaster, not just me leading the reconsidered screams, but someone who's a podcaster, someone who's a live streamer. You give people shout outs that, or you notice that they are participating a little but not consistently. By giving them a shout out, that could draw them in. I agree. All of this is probabilities, by the way. Marco says, this is amazing material. Thank you. Glad you like it. As I say, I do this professionally. I've been doing this for many, many years. I'm only giving you stuff that's real, like really real. This is the real stuff that really works for real. That's what I'm giving you. Plant a Seed says, when I'm participating in streams, a lot of times I'll just listen in the background. But I have noticed recently, the past few months, that I'm reading chats during live streams. And it's different because it's cool to see people that are nice, like being nice to each other, interacting. Yeah, I agree. The whole live stream world on YouTube, I would say to the general public, is largely unknown. Most people don't even know that it's basically like the new hanging out at a bar. It's the new hanging out at a bar. And I like that you come here to this bar and you hang out here. Jack says he's been lurking. Oh, good. So you heard the question stuff. I see Marco says, do you have any tips for presenting something abrasive? Woo! It depends a lot on what you mean by presenting something abrasive. What I would focus on is what the benefit is. And I would use a lot of language around things like, don't you love it how when you get through something difficult or painful, how good it is on the other side of that? Don't you love that so much? Like I would say things like that during the presentation. I would I would frame the the abrasive difficult thing as being a good thing to get through. Isn't it so much better that you don't have to learn this the hard way? Things like that. I would have a lot of language around that and a lot of building up to it. A lot of time building up to it. And also, to whatever degree you can, get your audience to buy into it during the build up. Like I was saying earlier, get them to say yes to things during the build up. The more that you can get them comfortable with you, agreeing with you, you want them to be in that mood to the max when you're going to say something abrasive. Marco says that I'm talking about where they're resistant. Yeah, okay, good. We're on the same page. Marco says thank you. Good. That's one technique. That's one thing to try. Viral says that's a good metaphor. Which one? What I should if it was good, I want to say it again. What did I say, Viral? That was a good metaphor that you liked. Planet Seed says I'm on a pub crawl right now. That's good. Going to different live streams. That's cool. What I like best about going to different live streams is the coolest situation is where you get two or more that sound good together. Like two music streams that somehow complement each other in a way that you weren't anticipating. That happens not always, but not infrequently either. Like you can often have, if you listen to like spacious, ambient, down tempo, you can often have two things playing at the same time. Or if you have something that's music instrumental versus a different window, somebody who's talking, that that can often work. So I do like being able to have two or more streams open at a time. But beyond that, it's tough to do that. It's tough to have like seven streams open. You're not gonna pull that off unless you have them on mute, I guess, which you could do. So as a reminder of the question types, these first four, they're straight up questions or they encourage your audience to say something. The first one was the active learning or active listening. That's where you take anything and make it into a straightforward yes no question with an obvious answer, have them answer yes to it, and briefly pause and then answer it yourself. Can I do this and have it be effective even though you know I'm doing the technique? Yeah. Is it more engaging even though you know I'm doing it? Is it more engaging because I'm phrasing it as a question? Yeah, yeah, it's more engaging. That's the first technique, the active learning or active listening. The next one, fill in the blank. That's where you draw a very sharp contrast. It's not left, but you are thinking the word that I wanted you to think. Draw a sharp contrast and say, it's not this one, it's, and then your audience spontaneously fills in the other one. That's a fill in the blank technique. The next one, the leading question. This is the one that I said this one may or may not apply. But the leading question is where you expect your audience to actually say a response to you. This one is not just for thinking in their head. Although I mean it would still work to have them just think this in their head. That would still work. But it's meant to be a reliable way to get them to respond to you verbally. And that is the three-part formula. You are asking a question that has a correct answer, no interpretation, no subjectivity, no opinions. There is a correct answer. 2 + 2 is 4. That's the answer. So a correct answer. Also, you didn't tell them the answer yet, which means they need to figure it out. They got to be able to figure it out quickly. Couple of seconds. They just kind of glance at it, think about it briefly. Oh, it's blah. That 3-part formula, that'll work every time. The next one, which is the other one where you expect your audience to say things, this is the expert technique, where you invite whoever it is that knows stuff, whoever it is that's already experienced with this thing, you just invite them to share. Because frankly, they should. It is better when they share. Everybody wins when they share. Somebody knows stuff and they have another insight. Yes. You want your setting, your class, your meeting, your live stream. You want your setting to be rich with people who are experts sharing their expertise. That's good. So yes, it's a technique, but it's also just like a very effective community building thing for you to do to engage your audience in a more, let's say, more sustained manner. Marco says, in your view, who are some of the best at this? Oh man, I don't know that I can give you public figures. I wish I could. I could tell you like people who I work with, specific individuals I work with who I think are awesome at it, but you don't know them. I can't give you public figures on this. There certainly are some. I mean, the truth is, most public figures are public figures because they're good at this stuff. So, if you pay attention to anyone who's into a public appearance, politician, an artist of some sort, are you going to find them doing techniques like this when they have an interview, when they have maybe not an interview because they're responding there. That's a different context. But whenever they're leading, if they're leading a conversation of any kind, are you going to catch them doing these techniques? Yep. Yeah. And that's, by the way, as an aside, that's another one of the ways that this content benefits you. Even though it does empower you, that's most of what I'm giving you. Of the 3 attention grabbers, I'm giving you empowerment the most. Even though it is empowering you, another like sort of side benefit is that you'll see these things more and you'll understand how they're techniques and why some people are consistently effective and others aren't. You're gonna like your eyes open as you understand this stuff more. Continuing on, because those were 4 question techniques: the active, the fill in the blank, the leading, the expert, and then there's 3 more that your audience doesn't necessarily need to say anything back to you. Actually, you know what? Let me change that again. Here's one more where they do say things. I should have reorganized these. But the one that is the circle of knowledge, that's where you have your audience tell you what their experience is. Yeah, I do this and this and this, and that leads me to this dead end. Cool. I'm going to help you get through that dead end. Yeah, I do this and I do this, and my, experience is like this. I live this, I experience this, I see this with my own eyes, and that takes me to this cliff. Good. I got the bridge that's going to get you over the cliff. That's a circle of knowledge. You have your audience bring you and tell you. That's the most important part of this. This brings in what's called consistency bias, because your audience is like publicly admitting that they need a solution to the thing, and you come in and give them the solution to the thing. So it's effective for a number of reasons. Most psychology hacks, which is what I'm giving you, these are psychology hacks. Most psychology hacks are not just one thing at a time. They're really doing like 4 things at 7 things at a time. So that's circle of knowledge. You have your audience tell you what they know, and Basically, let them talk themselves into their limitations. Then these final two, these are the ones where you don't necessarily need to have your audience say anything back, although they do work that way too. One of them is to have your audience remember something. Think back to blah, blah, blah. It might be something from earlier in your thing you're doing, earlier in your presentation, earlier in your live stream. Think back to blah, blah, blah. You remember earlier when we were doing that review of all the other content? We were doing that review of like how to get someone's attention. Remember that? That's a recall technique. If they say it back to you, cool. But it also works as engagement if you just have them remember it. They don't have to necessarily say it back. And sometimes, by the way, when I'm leading a class or a presentation, I tell my audience that. I'll say something like, hey, by the way, this next thing, I don't need you to say this out loud to me. Just think this in your head. And then I tell them to do something. You get 100% compliance when you do that. Everyone in the room does that when you use that technique. That always works. If you tell them you're relieved of needing to say this back to me, they will definitely all think whatever it is you want them to think. So that's a recall. Have them remember something. The final one was a relevance or imagination question. That's where you have them just think of themselves using this. Think of a time when you could use these questioning techniques. Maybe you are giving a meeting, leading a meeting. Maybe you are leading a live stream. Just think of a time that you could use this. You can even use a lot of these techniques in a one-on-one conversation. There are openings for them if you're very nimble with it. These last two techniques, the recall and the relevance, because you don't necessarily need the audience to say anything back to you, those also bleed into the second category of engagement that I promised you tonight. I said we talk about question techniques. And the other one is imperatives. Imperatives are where you just tell your audience to do something. Like, remember this. Think back to a time when, to the best of your recollection, see if you can remember. Just have them remember something. That's one kind of engagement. Your audience is doing something. And then relevance. See if you can imagine a time. Can you imagine yourself using this? See if you can think when this would be useful for you. That also has consistency bias in it. You're getting your audience to buy into the idea that it is useful in the first place. That's called thinking past the sale, if you've ever heard that name. Thinking past the sale. Have your audience commit to something that assumes the thing you're trying to persuade them on. It's not, can I sell you a sweater? It's which sweater color looks best to you. Well, in order to think about the color, you have to sort of get past the idea of whether you would want it. So that's thinking past the sale. I want to sell you a sweater, and man, I don't care what color it is. Talk to me. Which sweater can you see yourself wearing the most? Which color do you like the best? That's thinking past the sale. That's a technique. I see Plant a Seed has a comment as well. Let me see what's happening here. Pardon me as I eat some snacks over here. Plant a Seed says, I try not to put anyone above myself. That's not saying I'm great, but I like to just have a sort of a equal, we're all equal with different trades. Yeah. What's the word that there's a word I'm thinking of, and that's what Plant a Seed is saying. It's like, oh, there's another word. Egalitarian. That's the word I'm thinking of. Egalitarian. Which means everyone is on an equal platform. Everyone is to be esteemed equally. Everyone is equally welcome to come to the thing of whatever you're talking about. Egalitarian. Which I would agree with. I tend to take an egalitarian view on most things. That's just, I don't know, I don't know if that's how I was brought up, or I'm not sure what that's about, but I do tend to do that by default, is to be somewhat egalitarian. So going back to techniques, we got a bunch of question techniques, 7 question techniques, and at least 2 of them are really imperatives. Imperatives that are having your audience do something. And as far as imperatives, I don't have like 7 imperative techniques, but I have just um, a core principle, which is that you should feel empowered to boss your audience around. Like that's kind of, you're leading the conversation. This is something that I will often coach people on, is they like, "Oh, I if you wouldn't mind." It's like, drop all of that. Just cut to the chase. Don't talk in a way with a lot of padding. Don't say things like, "All right, so maybe if you would think about blah 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 blah." No, 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 no. Cut out the okay, the so, the maybe, if you would. Cut out all of that. Just start with think about blah 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 blah. That's the technique for imperatives. I don't have 7 different categories. That's it. And now, whatever you have them do, that could be remembering something, that could be try to imagine yourself with this thing. Those are 2 I gave you already. Whatever it is you're giving them, use very direct language. That's the technique. That's the real technique there. Once you got that, really anything you're telling them is fair game, such as put your thoughts in the chat, like this video, send me an email. Just cut to the verb. Let the verb be the first thing you say, at least if we're talking English. However you express imperatives in your language. In English, you just use the verb right away, and that's it. Look at this. By the way, look at this thing that's on my ceiling here. You see the soundproofing that's on my ceiling? Now, think about, why are you looking at that right now? Are you looking at that because I told you to look at it? The answer is yes. Yes, that's why you were just looking at this thing on the ceiling. That's the reason. And so that's what I'm talking about. Just directly boss your audience around. Tell them to do something. Think about this. Imagine yourself using this. By the way, do think about this. Imagine yourself using this. Remember, we talked about that. You might have your audience write something down. Tell me what you think about blah, blah, blah. Those are all imperatives. Now, on that last one of tell me what you think about blah, 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 if the imperative that you're giving your audience is to have them respond to you, to have them tell you something, if that's the command, that's what the word imperative means, by the way. If you're not familiar with that word, imperative, it just means command. So if that's what you're commanding your audience to do, to tell you something, to respond in some way that you will see, if that's the case, then there is another technique you need to use in order to be effective at this. By the way, do I have your attention a little bit now? Or do you want to hear what's the technique to be more effective? Do you think that's because I phrased it as an empowerment thing, that it's going to make you able better? That's the reason you want to hear it now. And the only reason you want to hear it is because I told you. That's what this is all about. It's about you weaving what language creates in your audience's mind and their perception. So what's the technique? If you're going to have your audience respond to you in some way, you're going to have your audience do something to you or for you in a way you can see. If that's going to be the technique, or that's going to be the imperative rather you use, what's the technique to be effective at it? You have to give them a lot of notice. You have to tell them things like, all right, I'm going to ask you to do this thing right now, so get ready to do it. Here we go. All right, here it comes. I hope you're ready for it. You have to really heavily signal to them that you are expecting them to respond. Here's what I'm expecting you to do. I'm expecting you to tell me. I'm looking to see who's going to be the first person to do this. Who's going to be fastest to do this? I don't know. I'm going to ask you the thing. Here it comes. A lot of signaling, because they have to get out of a mode of just listening to you in the background while they do whatever else. And then they have to get into the mode of like, oh, actually, hold on, I have to get engaged here. So that's what the signaling is for. It's buying them time. That's if you actually want them to respond to you and say things to you, you have to signal heavily that it's coming. And that will make you more effective at it. I see Plant a Seed has another comment here. Plant a Seed says, I have seen it from the start and wonder why it's there. Are you talking about my equanimity? I'm happy to respond. I need clarifications on what you're asking. Wondered why it's there on its own. Why what is there? You've seen something from the start and you wonder why it's there. Friends, you've got the rundown of engagement. We're in this topic of imperatives. As I say, the secret to imperatives, if it's something that your audience does not need to respond to. Oh, Plant a Seed is talking about the soundproofing above me. He said, wonder why it's there. I just put it all over the place. There's more soundproofing in other places in the room that you can't see on the camera right now. So the soundproofing is just kind of all over the place in this room. Thank you for clarifying that, by the way. I wasn't sure. I wanted to make sure I was addressing what you were curious about. But the imperatives. You have this like categorization in your mind. Is the imperative something that your audience can just do on their own? They don't have to say anything to you. It's like a mental exercise, or it's something that they just do and they don't have to respond to in any way. Or are you giving them an imperative, a command? Are you giving them something that they do have to respond to you? If it's something that they don't have to respond to you, they can just do it in their head, or they do it in a way that you don't need to see. In that case, the main thing you need in order to be effective is to reduce the quantity of words you say. Just cut straight to the verb. Here is the command, do this. Look at this. Think about this. Remember this. Think of a time when this. Just tell them directly the thing. Don't have any padding language in this. That's the case of imperatives or commands where your audience can just do the thing and you don't have to know about it. You don't have to know what the results were. The other category is you are expecting them to say something back to you. You do want to hear what they did or what they came up with. In that one, you still stick with the imperative, cut to the verb, cut to the chase, tell them the thing. But before you get there, you have to give them a lot of build-up. That's the second category of imperatives. Tell me what you think about blah. What's your opinion on this? Who has had experience with this? Please let me know your advice on this. When you expect them to actually say something back to you as an imperative, in that case, you got to give them some build-up. Give them time to realize, like, oh, you're saying a thing. I see right now, Thomas! Woo! Thomas has joined us. Yes, that's good. But here's the final piece. Here's the final new thing that I have for you for this stream today. And then we'll do one last rundown of everything. The final new thing is a so-called call to action. Calls to action. To have your audience take some bigger action of some sort. Like this video. Please subscribe. Please share this video. Please, do whatever in the Discord. Anything like that. That requires a bit more persuading. To have your audience go and take like a follow-up action, take some kind of homework from you, that's big. And it's powerful. I mean, if you have that, it's good. It's good to do. But my recommendation for you is to consider these calls to action, some kind of follow-up, some kind of homework assignment, a call to action. My recommendation to you is that you consider that very advanced. That only works when your audience is already engaged. Your audience already does things that you are having them do. A call to action is pretty advanced. So I wouldn't start there, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of additional buildup. The fundamentals we talked about today, you got to have those kinds of things really solid before you try to proceed to something like giving your audience or your, live stream listeners a homework assignment. It's like, whoo, man, they really got to be bought in for that. All right, friends, you got it all. You got all the content we had for today. This was really good. I'm going to give you one run through one more time. If you are here with us live in the chat, if you have any additional follow-ups, you have something you want to add, you have something you want to ask or clarify, let me know that. Also, by the way, if you are here with us live in the chat, I'm about to ask you another question. So here's something to start thinking about. Look at me getting you ready. Look at me signaling that a question is coming. If you have any thoughts on what else you'd like to hear in these discussion streams, I'm about to ask you that. I'm not asking you just yet. I'm about to ask you in a little bit because we're going to do the summary right now. So now is the time for what are your follow-ups from this stream today. But you can also, in the back of your head, start thinking about other streams, other things you might like to see. So let me know, my friends, as we go through this, what are your follow-ups on anything we covered today? What did we cover today? Well, here's what we covered today. We started with a review of previous principles. Talk about drivers. Everybody has a different interpretive framework. You are most effective when you are speaking their language, not trying to express yourself how you want. You're speaking their language. That's level 0. That's the starting point. Today, we also reviewed how do you get your audience's attention in a way that's sustainable, systemic, and that is to promise them a benefit, promise them that if they pay attention here, they're going to get a benefit of some sort, and that is through one of 3 main ways: through promising them empowerment, promising them pleasure, promising them some kind of strategic advantage. That was review for today. Then we moved into the actual engagement techniques. What were the engagement techniques? Well, I told you that if you can set expectations, that's the best place to start. And this might vary, it might or might not apply to what you're doing. If you can say, hey, here's how things are going to go. I'm going to do this and this and this. I'm going to lead the live stream like this. At that point, you're going to have the opportunity to do this. Let me know this other thing. You'll get the most out of this if you do this. If you just say how things are going to go, that's called setting expectations. That's a very powerful framework just to get your audience into the psychology that they are following you. And that sets them up to engage with you more. P.S. It's also helpful. A lot of people need that kind of structure, and that helps them to listen better. So it's helpful for multiple reasons. Setting expectations. That's the first thing we did today. First thing you got today. Then we moved into the 2 main categories of fundamental engagement: question techniques and imperatives or commands. The question techniques, I gave you 5 techniques, and I'm just going to summarize their name right now. Naturally, you can go back in the stream and watch it again if you want to get the how. We got active learning. Can I phrase everything as a question? Yep. We got fill in the blank, strict binary. The leading question, where you get them in a 3-part formula to think something on their own. They figure something out. The expert technique, where you invite people who are experienced to share their experience, their insights, put it in their words. The circle of knowledge technique, where you have your audience tell you, you ask them, that's the question, you ask them to tell you what their experience is in this area, and then ultimately build up to what their need is, what's their pain point, what's their limitation. Have them tell their story and get to the point where they need your help. That's a circle of knowledge technique. Two more question types that are also imperatives. Have your audience remember something. Think back to something earlier today. Think back to something in your previous experience. Remember some, 17 years ago, whatever. Have them remember something. It's a recall technique. Finally, the seventh question technique and kind of second imperative is a relevance or imagination technique. Have your audience think of how this applies to them. Imagine yourself using this. See yourself in a situation where this makes sense for you. That's a relevance or imagination technique. So, recall and relevance being question techniques, they also are imperatives. With imperatives, the technique to be effective is just to cut to the chase with the command. Don't put padding on it at all. Don't try to be nice, boss them around. Your audience is there listening to you. It is appropriate for you to just tell them things. You don't have to be nice and polite. So just tell them directly. Here's a command. Do this. Think of this. Look at this. Remember that. Write this down, etc. If your audience needs to say it back to you, it's not just something they can do on their own, but you need to get feedback from them somehow. If you need that, then you got to give them a lot of signaling ahead of time. All right, I'm going to ask you this question soon. Start thinking about it now. That's signaling. And then the final piece of imperatives or commands is the so-called call to action, where you give your audience a follow-up of some sort, a homework assignment. My only admonition to you for this is that it's advanced. Your audience has to already be very engaged with you before you can even think about these calls to action. That's it. That is it, my friends. That was the summary for today. You got how to get their attention, and now today you got a variety of methods for how to get your audience to do something, how to get some kind of action out of your audience. Thomas says, I go too far. I'm too passionate. Really? I'll take that feedback. I go too far. I should go less far. I should be less passionate. Friends, thank you for being here today. You got a lot. You got a lot of good content. There's a lot of ways that you can use this. A lot of ways that you can apply this. As I say, my professional expertise is applying this stuff in a context where you are recognized as the speaker. You're talking and people recognize that you're talking. That's when this works the best. But the truth is you can use this for a number of other settings too. Viral says this is a very inspiring live stream. Great stuff. Cool. I'm glad you like it. We will continue doing these discussion streams. I encourage you to let me know what else you would like to see, what other topics you'd like to see in these streams. If you're here in the live chat, you can let me know now. If you're watching after the stream, you're joining us out on replay, let me know in the comments. What are some other things you're interested in this area of expertise? What are some other things you're interested in? In previous streams, I've talked about some other things. I talked about cognitive biases on one stream. That one was very much an unprepared discussion. I see Thomas says he's put something in the comments. Oh, good. I'm going to look for that after the stream. That's good. Thank you. Another one was influence. That's a good one. I'd like to talk more about influence, which is just, getting someone to agree with something repeatedly. That's all influence is. I thought about possibly doing like live commentaries on basically reaction videos for how people speak and just doing commentary on it. Like, oh yeah, did you see that? That was so dope. That's what I'm talking about when I say you get their attention with a whatever, and just like narrate this whole perspective. Because, I mean, as I say, I've done this. The amount of hours that I have put into observing people, giving them highly detailed feedback. I have a very finely tuned, um, I don't know, lens. I see a lot. uh, so yeah, I was considering doing that, but then the question is like, well, where are the videos I would get? I don't want to just like take something someone would be uncomfortable with. So I don't know. I'm thinking about that. It's a possibility. Or who knows? Who knows where else these discussion streams are going to go? I really don't know. I'm happy to do this particular subject matter, but this wouldn't go on forever. The bottomless pit of this subject matter is when you dig into it one on one. This content, like how to speak effectively, there's not really an endless bottomless pit of principles. There's a few core principles. And so I can share those with you. And if there are things that you're interested in, I can comment on those. But aside from that, we'll need to move on to something else. I'm wondering, I think it could be good if I is there some kind of like current events? Commenting on current events is a way to have like a bottomless pit of content. How could is there some kind of current events thing I can do to analyze like how someone is speaking? It doesn't have to be current events. It could be other things. Maybe I should invite people to volunteer. Like, hey, who wants feedback on this? Although, that's the kind of thing I normally charge for. That's my coaching. I could criticize without offering helpful suggestions. Maybe I'll do that for free. Jack says he had the topic of observing. Jack says, "What are structured ways of observing and pivoting accordingly?" Do you mean like reading the room, like adjusting based on what your audience is doing? Is that what you mean by observing? This was a good instrumental. I like these unspoken streams. I think I'm going to start doing them more. I'm thinking about doing these unspoken streams, the instrumental live looping and synth streams that I do. I'm thinking about doing them maybe as Wednesdays and Saturdays. Those are my two dedicated days per week. And then extra streams could be Tinker or whatever else I do. Jack says, yes, that is what he was asking about in terms of pivoting. I'm just going to note this because Jack, on the previous stream, Jack said he wanted to know about questioning. So I built this stream in response to what Jack said previously. So Jack, you can know that you are a very highly engaged audience member and you had like 100% influence over this stream right now. This one right now that we're doing this instant. This came from Jack. So now Jack's saying another one. What can I do? I'm powerless. I just have to do whatever Jack says. Okay, pivoting based on observing your audience. Structured ways of approaching that. Okay. That one might require a little bit more development, but that's doable. I might expand it a little. I don't know if we could do a full hour on that. I can think of a couple things. I would say don't expect this one in the next stream. but this is something that I can work in. Cool. For everyone else, again, as I say, let me know any things that you are interested in hearing. Join us again for more of these discussion streams. We're doing these discussion streams about once a week. It's not very strict. It might be the next one might be in 9 days. It's like about once a week. And underline the word about. About once a week. We do these discussion streams. I have no idea what the next one's going to be. We'll see. It may or may not be on any of these topics. I might decide to pivot and experiment with something wildly different. Who knows? But whatever it is, my friends, I hope to see you again then. I hope to see you in my music streams as well. And until then, please, please, please have a very good rest of your day today. Please have a very excellent and amazing rest of your day today. Please let the rest of your day today bring you all manner of healing and blessing today. And I will see you in the next Reconsider It live stream.